In 1978, a pilot vanished after reporting something impossible. This is the story of Frederick Valentich. What happened next defies simple explanation. The date was October 21st, 1978. 20-year-old Frederick Valentich was a confident pilot flying to King Island. Something appeared in the sky with him. He reported seeing another aircraft, long, metallic, and illuminated by 4 brilliant green lights. There were no other known aircraft in his vicinity. For 6 minutes, a young pilot tried to make sense of the unbelievable. It was not an aircraft, he insisted. The air traffic controller could only listen. The final moments of the transmission are chilling. Frederick Valentich reported a strange object orbiting his aircraft at high speed. His engine began to run rough. The controller asked him to identify the aircraft. "It's not an aircraft," he repeated. Then came the final fragmented sounds, metallic clicks and scrapes. And then there was only silence. Just like that, Frederick Valentich and his Cessna were gone. Air traffic control tried to re-establish contact, but there was no reply. An extensive search was launched, but they found nothing. It was as if the aircraft had simply been plucked from the sky. Headlines screamed of the mystery pilot. Was it something more? Strange reports began to surface of unusual green lights in the sky. The lack of evidence left every possibility on the table, creating a legend that would endure. What happened to Frederick Valentich? To understand the mystery, we must first understand the man. Frederick Valentich was captivated by the boundless freedom of the sky. His friends remember him always talking about flying. It was a calling, a fundamental part of his identity. He pursued his pilot's license, pouring his energy into training. He was a dedicated student, someone who respected the rules. His choice of aircraft, the Cessna 182L, was a familiar and reliable machine. Flying was a way to see the world from a perspective few others ever experience. It was this deep connection to aviation that makes his disappearance all the more perplexing. But the sky held more than just clouds and stars for him. He was enthralled by its mysteries. This dual passion would set the stage for the final, terrifying chapter of his life. Frederick Valentich was a firm believer in UFOs. He collected books and articles on sightings from around the world, discussing the topic with conviction. To him, the UFO phenomenon was a real mystery. His father recalled that Frederick had a genuine fear of what might be lurking above. This belief provides context for his final radio transmission. Some skeptics question his credibility, suggesting he may have misidentified a conventional object. Others propose he staged an elaborate hoax. Ultimately, Frederick's beliefs make the puzzle of his disappearance even more complex. Was he a credible witness or a victim of his own convictions over the Bass Strait? This question forces us to consider the fine line between perception and reality. October 21st, 1978, began as a normal Saturday. The weather was ideal for a flight across the Bass Strait. Frederick Valentich planned a routine flight from Melbourne's Moorabbin Airport to King Island to pick up friends and crayfish, returning that evening. He meticulously prepared his Cessna, registration VHDSJ, completed his pre-flight checks, and filed his flight plan. At 6:19 p.m., Valentich took off, heading south. 47 minutes into the flight, his calm tone changed to confusion. He had something to report, something he couldn't explain. The flight to King Island was the embodiment of Frederick's life ambition. Flying was where he felt most alive. He dreamed of flying larger planes, of seeing the world from the captain's seat. Every flight was a part of that larger dream. He was a young man on the cusp of his future. He had applied to join the Royal Australian Air Force but was rejected. Instead, it strengthened his resolve to succeed as a civilian pilot. This drive is an important part of his psychological profile. Those who knew him saw a young man deeply committed to his goals. The flight to King Island was part of this narrative of progress and ambition. This context makes his disappearance all the more tragic. We are left with the image of a young dreamer whose ambitions were cut short in the most mysterious way imaginable. A young man chasing his dream in the vast twilight sky flew into a mystery from which he would never return. As Frederick Valentich's Cessna passed over Cape Otway, he was leaving the known world behind. Ahead lay the Bass Strait, a vast and unpredictable expanse. The sun had set, painting the sky in twilight colors. This stretch of open water was the most challenging part of his journey. The conditions remained perfect: calm seas, light winds, and excellent visibility. From his vantage point, Frederick should have had a clear view of the horizon. In this vast sky, he should have been completely alone. He was a solitary figure between the dark water and the darkening sky, but this solitude was about to be shattered. He was flying into a patch of sky where the rules of aviation were about to be suspended. He was flying into a mystery. The sky was about to reveal a different, terrifying side. It was a doorway into the unknown. At 7:06 p.m., the flight's routine was broken. Frederick contacted Melbourne Air Traffic Control with a strange query. He asked if there was any traffic below 5,000 feet. The answer was negative. Frederick reported seeing a large aircraft with 4 bright landing lights. The object was not behaving like a conventional aircraft. He told Roby that the aircraft had passed over him. The controller reiterated that he saw nothing. He watched as the object approached, then circled above him. This was not the behavior of a commercial airliner or a military jet. He was now an unwilling participant in a bizarre aerial encounter. His training had not prepared him for this. The initial curiosity gave way to a creeping sense of unease. As the encounter continued, Frederick's description grew stranger, his confusion turning to alarm. He informed Melbourne Control that the object was approaching him. Its movements were erratic. It seemed to be toying with him, orbiting his Cessna. Roby, still seeing nothing on his radar, was at a loss as the pilot's account grew more incredible. Frederick described the object as long and metallic. "It has a green light," he reported. He reported that the object was hovering above him. "It's hovering and it's not an aircraft," he stated. Roby confirmed that no aircraft was visible on his screen. His reality was diverging sharply from the reality on the ground. Its intentions a complete and terrifying mystery. The situation in the skies above the Bass Strait escalated into a terrifying high-stakes dance. Frederick Valentich reported the object was actively engaging with him. "He's playing some sort of game," he said, his voice tight with tension. "He's flying over me 2-3 times at a time at speeds I could not identify." It felt like a deliberate act of intimidation. The Cessna was no match for the phenomenon it was encountering. It was like a sailboat being circled by a nuclear submarine. His initial fascination had now completely evaporated, replaced by a primal fear. His transmissions to the ground became more frantic. "It seems to me that he's chasing me," he reported. He was a helpless witness to a drama unfolding in the dark. The object's silent, menacing presence was an assault on his senses. He was alone in a dance with the unknown. As the strange craft continued its maneuvers, Frederick Valentich's voice broke through. "My engine is rough idling." The Cessna's engine, once steady, began to sputter and cough. For a pilot over open water, engine trouble is the ultimate nightmare. The encounter was now a direct threat to his survival. The controller asked, "What are your intentions?" Frederick replied, "My intention is to go to King Island," clinging to his original plan. "He is hovering and he is not an aircraft," Frederick insisted, his transmission growing desperate. The object's presence seemed to be causing his plane to fail. Then came the final, haunting sounds. 17 seconds of sharp, metallic noises. Investigators later described them as metallic, scraping sounds, unnatural, violent. Was it a collision? The aircraft tearing apart? After those 17 seconds, the microphone clicked off, and then there was only silence. The mystery deepened, leaving only questions in the darkness. Frederick Valentich's fateful transmission began calmly. "Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known traffic below 5,000? Controller Steve Roby checked his radar. "No known traffic," he replied. Valentich insisted he saw a large aircraft at his altitude. Something real, not just a distant light. Roby, bound by his instruments, could only repeat. The sky was clear. The contradiction was immediate and unsettling. Valentich described the object passing overhead at high speed, with 4 bright lights. Its movements were anything but conventional. Swift, agile, beyond any known aircraft. Roby suggested it might be military, but Valentich dismissed this. The object was now orbiting him, its movements deliberate. What began as a routine check had become the start of a terrifying ordeal. Valentich was no longer just a pilot. He was a witness. The first contact had changed everything. The conversation shifted as Frederick's assessment changed. He described the object as long, metallic, shiny, unlike anything he'd seen. His pilot's eye couldn't make sense of it. Then the chilling declaration, "It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." Valentich had crossed into the unknown, reporting a true UFO. The object had a green light, a detail that would echo in later witness reports. It hovered above him, a silent, glowing presence. Roby, with no radar data or visual confirmation, could only listen. Valentich's insistence left Roby with no protocol to follow. He was a helpless witness to a terrifying event, guided only by the words of a pilot staring into the abyss. The rules of aviation no longer applied. The sky had become a place of mystery. The encounter escalated, no longer passive but a direct, terrifying interaction. Frederick reported, "It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me at speeds I can't identify." The object's movements were purposeful, intelligent, menacing. It would vanish, then reappear from another direction, utter technological dominance. The Cessna was at its mercy. Frederick's cockpit became a prison. He was being toyed with by a predator. The psychological pressure was immense. The object's silent, impossible maneuvers defied all logic. The green light glowed, a malevolent eye in the darkness. Frederick was no longer in control. He was prey. The sky, once vast and open, had become a claustrophobic arena. The rules had changed. He was trapped in a celestial game. The final phase of the transmission marked the climax. Frederick's voice cracked. "My engine is rough idling." It's coughed. The engine was failing, the threat now physical. Robbie asked for his intentions. Frederick replied, "My intention is to go to King Island. He is hovering, and he is not an aircraft." These were his last clear words. Suddenly, chaos. Frederick's voice cut off, replaced by 17 seconds of harsh metallic noises. Experts could not identify the sounds, scraping, tearing metal. It was the sound of the end. After 17 seconds, the microphone clicked off. Silence fell. Roby called out, "Delta Sierra Juliet, do you read?" No reply. Frederick, his Cessna, and the strange object had vanished. Only the chilling recording remained, a mystery just beginning. The silence after the final transmission was more chilling than any sound. In the control room, Steve Roby and his team stared at their screens, the metallic scrapes echoing in their minds. An official uncertainty phase was declared, escalating quickly to distress. The Royal Australian Air Force scrambled a search plane to Valentich's last known position. The search assumed a crash, but the sea offered no clues. No wreckage, no debris, nothing. It was as if the Cessna had vanished without a trace. The silence from the radio was mirrored by the silence from the sea. At dawn, the search expanded. Civilian aircraft and boats joined in, covering over 1,000 square miles. Authorities were desperate for any evidence. As the first day ended with no results, dread set in. This was no simple recovery. A profound and enduring mystery had begun. For 4 long days, the search for Frederick Valentich continued with unwavering intensity. The operation was one of the largest air and sea searches in Australian history at the time. Planes methodically crisscrossed the sky, their crews straining their eyes for any sign of wreckage, while boats below navigated the choppy waters of the Bass Strait. The public was captivated, following the news reports with a mixture of hope and dread. The media descended on the story, and Valentich's name and photograph were suddenly everywhere. The young pilot's disappearance had become a national obsession, a real-life drama playing out on the wild southern coast of the continent. Investigators from the Department of Transport began their own parallel inquiry. They meticulously reviewed every piece of available evidence. They scrutinized Frederick's flight record, his training history, and his psychological state. They interviewed his family, friends, and flight instructors, searching for any clue that might explain his disappearance. They found a competent young pilot with a passion for flying and a known interest in UFOs, but nothing to suggest he was suicidal or planning to stage a hoax. The official investigation was hitting the same wall as the physical search, a complete and total lack of concrete evidence to support any single theory. The centerpiece of the investigation was the audio recording of the final 6-minute transmission. Experts analyzed every word, every sound, every pause. The transcript was released to the public, and its contents only deepened the mystery. The strange metallic scraping sounds at the end were particularly baffling. What could have made that noise? Was it the sound of the aircraft breaking up under stress? Or was it, as some more imaginative theory suggested, the sound of the Cessna being grappled by an external object? Without the plane itself, the sounds were just disembodied clues in a puzzle with no solution, open to endless, unsettling interpretations. On October 25, 1978, after 4 days of fruitless searching, the official operation was called off. The authorities concluded that Frederick Valentich and his Cessna were lost at sea, presumed to have crashed. But this official conclusion satisfied no one. How could a plane and its pilot vanish so completely? Not a single piece of debris, not a drop of oil, not a fragment of the aircraft was ever found. The lack of evidence was, in itself, the most powerful evidence that something highly unusual had occurred. The official search was over, but the public and private search for answers had only just begun. Just as the official search was winding down, a new and startling element was added to the mystery. As news of Valentich's disappearance and his description of a green light spread, people began to come forward. A number of independent witnesses, scattered along the Victorian coast, reported seeing strange aerial phenomena on the very same night. They had seen these lights before they even knew a pilot was missing, their accounts untainted by the media frenzy. These reports, when pieced together, painted a compelling and corroborative picture that could not be easily dismissed by investigators or skeptics. One of the most credible accounts came from a group of fishermen out on the Bass Strait. They reported seeing an erratically moving green light in the sky at approximately the same time, and in the same location as Valentich's disappearance. A local plumber, Roy Manifold, had been setting up a time-lapse camera to photograph the sunset over the water near Cape Otway. When he developed his film, one frame, taken at approximately 6:47 p.m., just minutes before Valentich's first radio call, captured a strange object in the sky. It appeared as a dark metallic shape with a strange exhaust-like plume, seemingly moving at high speed out of the water. Other witnesses from the shore described seeing a single brilliant green light moving in a strange non-linear fashion. Some said it hovered for a time before shooting off at an incredible speed. One family reported watching a green light shadow a small red and white aircraft, the same colors as Valentich's Cessna, as it flew down the coast. They watched until both the plane and the green light disappeared from view. The sheer number of these reports, coming from different people in different locations, all describing a similar phenomenon, gave significant weight to Valentich's last, terrifying claims. These witness accounts transformed the Valentich case. It was no longer just the story of a single pilot's bizarre radio transmission. It was now a mass sighting event, corroborated by multiple independent observers on the ground. For UFO researchers and believers, this was the smoking gun. It suggested that Frederick Valentich was not hallucinating or making up a story. He was accurately reporting what he saw, an event that was witnessed by others. The outcry grew louder. The official explanation of a simple crash seemed increasingly inadequate in the face of so much strange and compelling testimony. In the years following the disappearance, investigators have proposed conventional theories to explain what happened to Frederick Valentich. The simplest explanation is pilot disorientation, especially at twilight over the Bass Strait. Another theory is catastrophic engine failure. Then there is the theory that the entire event was a deliberate hoax, staged to create a legendary mystery. Each of these rational explanations, however, leaves critical questions unanswered. Why was no wreckage ever found? And if it was a hoax, where did he go? The lack of conclusive evidence is what keeps the mystery alive, leaving a frustrating void where a clear answer should be. Of all the theories, none is more captivating than alien abduction. This theory posits Valentich was an unwilling participant in a close encounter. Proponents argue the object he described matches thousands of UFO reports. Valentich was providing a real-time account of non-human technology. The extraterrestrial hypothesis explains baffling aspects of the case. This theory explains the disappearance of the aircraft. The strange metallic scraping sounds could have been the noise of the small plane being captured. Multiple witness accounts from the ground support this theory. For believers, Valentich encountered something not of this earth. Yet, the abduction theory remains speculation, requiring a belief in extraterrestrial visitation. Was Valentich the victim of an accident, or a pioneer who flew too close to a hidden truth? The answer remains hidden. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich stands as a chilling reminder of how quickly the ordinary can descend into the unexplainable. In a world governed by reason and routine, the night sky over the Bass Strait became the stage for one of history's most baffling aviation mysteries. Every detail, from the confident young pilot to the final, desperate radio call, converges into a narrative that defies conventional resolution. The facts are clear, yet the truth slips further away with every year that passes. What happened over those dark waters has never been fully understood. Each attempt to explain it, whether as accident, hoax, or something otherworldly, leaves us unsatisfied, yearning for answers that the sky refuses to give. The search for Frederick Valentich did not just span miles of ocean, it traversed the boundaries between skepticism and belief, between science and the supernatural. The official investigations were meticulous, exhaustive, and ultimately inconclusive. No wreckage, no oil slick, no trace of the Cessna 182L or its young pilot was ever found. The lack of evidence is almost as mysterious as the event itself, inviting speculation and theories that range from plausible to extraordinary. Witnesses spoke of green lights and strange objects, their voices echoing across decades as part of a chorus that refuses to let the case fade into obscurity. For those who loved Frederick, the mystery is personal and painful. For the world, it is an unresolved riddle that continues to provoke wonder and fear. The Bass Strait, already infamous for its dangerous currents and legendary shipwrecks, gained a new reputation that night. The sky itself became suspect, a place not just of dreams and ambition, but of secrets best left unspoken. Every new witness, every new scrap of evidence, only deepens the shadows over these waters. The line between reality and the unknown has never felt thinner or more dangerous. The story of Frederick Valentich endures because it resists closure. It is a warning and an invitation, a tale told in hushed tones by those who watch the skies and wait for something, anything, to break the silence. As night falls over the Bass Strait, the mystery lingers, as haunting as the cold wind that sweeps the waves, and as persistent as the questions that still hang, unanswered, above the dark expanse. Frederick Valentich's final moments have become the stuff of legend. His voice, trembling yet determined, echoes through the static of history. He is hovering, and he is not an aircraft. These words, spoken in fear and wonder, invite us to look beyond what we know, to confront the possibility that something else may be watching, waiting, and perhaps even reaching out. Was it a tragic accident, a carefully orchestrated vanishing, or the first direct contact with a power beyond comprehension? The possibilities are as vast and unfathomable as the night sky itself. Decades later, the case remains a touchstone for UFO believers and skeptics alike. It is studied in documentaries, debated in forums, and dissected by aviation experts. Yet, the core of the story, a young man alone against the unknown, retains its emotional grip. It's not just the absence of evidence that makes this case so powerful, but the echoes of that final frantic transmission, the metallic scraping, the silence that followed, and the green light witnessed by so many. These are the fragments that keep the legend alive, haunting investigators and dreamers across generations. The Valentich mystery invites us to remember that our world is not as ordinary as we'd like to believe. It reminds us that the skies, for all our charts and radars, still hold secrets. The haunting words of the narrator linger. Was it a hoax, a tragic accident, or contact with something not of this earth? The skies still hold the answer. As long as the questions remain, so too will the story, passed from one generation of skywatchers to the next, always on the edge of revelation, always just out of reach. So as the night falls once more over the Southern Ocean, let us look up and wonder. The truth is still out there, waiting, and perhaps one day the silence will break. A voice from the dark, an answer at last. Until then, the mystery of Frederick Valentich will remain unsolved and unforgettable, a beacon for all who seek the unknown.